Hey Becky, it is Tiffany at Munchkins and Mohawks. Going to be critiquing your images today for Chic Critique. It's our last week and I'm very sad to say goodbye. I know that you've had a rough couple weeks. Again, we're friends on Facebook and I've been kind of following the sad story of the little horse that we critiqued on the first week. I guess he got out of the pen or the stable area, and wolf or a coyote must have got him. So if you remember, if you're watching this and other people remember the horse image that we critiqued here, let's find it here. It's going to be even more special to have that image there. So again, reminder why taking pictures is just, it's so important to be able to capture those memories. So I'm really sorry to hear about your loss, Becky. So understandably, you haven't had a whole lot of time to do, get out there and shoot. So we're going to be critiquing, I think, some mostly images from before last week. So let's take a look at your first image. We've got a shutter speed of 1/640, ISO 400, f7.1. I really want you to get your f-stop down substantially lower than that. You know, for 3 people, like I said in the past, if you were to select like a 3.2 for an f-stop, that would be completely appropriate. I would venture to go down to 2.8 even with 3 subjects. Typically, I try to keep it one, well, each subject is one stop. So, or one one f-stop. So, 1.4, 1.8 for one person, 2.8 for 2 people, 3.2 for 3 people, and so on and so forth. So here we could have gotten some more light on our subjects, or allowed more light into our lens, I should say, if we would have opened up that aperture wider. Our subjects would have been nice and in focus anyway, even at a lower f-stop. So I love the tones that you've got going on with this image here. I love we've got the fall foliage going on behind us. I love how, let's pull this into Photoshop here. Becky, I love how you flip the image. So I see here on the original, quite a bit underexposed, and you shot them on the left-hand side, but you did take my directions. Let's see here. And utilized a golden spiral here. Okay, great work there. Okay, and I love how you've enhanced the tones in Photoshop. It looks like that you brighten them up quite nicely. I could see a little bit more brightening on the little girl's face. Let's talk about our composition a little bit. So now that we've got them on the left-hand side of the page, we've got our eye resting right on them. I would venture to move them over just a little bit more. We could do that by duplicating the layer, hit T to transform, and we just move them over a little bit here. I'm going to create a layer mask, B for brush, and I'm going to move my flow down to about 30-ish% and kind of just work this in here. Okay, just quickly kind of do that. I would go back in here and clean that up to make sure that there was no duplicate leaves and no repeating patterns, because that's one way to make it look like it was photoshopped, and you don't want to do that. Okay, so we've got them on the side of the page here, our eyes resting right on them. I would want to go ahead and raise our mid-tones up a little bit on our little girl's face here. So I'm going to hit this little eyedropper. And I go ahead and pull that up a little bit. Command I to invert, B for brush. Let's make sure we put our flow all the way back up again. Okay, so we can see our before and after. that's washing out their hair and their skin tones too much, we can go ahead and come back in and mask that back. Actually, I like her yellow a little bit brighter. There we go. Okay. As far as composition goes here, I would like to have seen them a little bit closer. So I always tell my people to kind of squish them together and get as close as you possibly can. So if we could have had mom and little girl kind of sitting even closer together, and sometimes I tell them to do Eskimo kisses, or if her head was, let me get a darker, sorry here. Had her head on mom's shoulder and kind of had her tucked in a little bit better. Also, I know it's hard sometimes with moms because they've got their hair done and it's all down and beautiful, but when we go to pose them or to get them to interact, it kind of covers their faces and you can't really see their expressions and their interactions. And really that's what we're trying to capture. So I love the expression we've got on the little girl's face. It's just perfect. And mom, we can kind of see it here, but I would have loved if we would have stopped and taken a moment and kind of just pushed her hair back a little bit. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll just take like one little slice of hair and kind of put it behind her ear and then put the hair over top of her ear so her ear's not sticking out. That kind of will help. I also sometimes bring bobby pins with me. Actually, I just kind of leave them in my car and I have a little stash in there so that in this very case, when we've got a mom that's got hair that tends to kind of fall into their face, that I can kind of pin that back and allow their expressions to be seen. I love little girl here. Look how cute. She's so sweet. So yes, let's kind of tuck little girl back in there, have her leaning in on mom. Mom could have like leaned her head in this way and she could have leaned her head in this way. I really like when everybody's touching. So if we kind of tightened up this triangle a little bit, I think it would have been a little bit of a stronger image. But I love what you've done with your editing. It's totally natural and it's not overdone. Like I said, we could have moved this image to the right a little bit. If we would have shot this in RAW, I feel like we could have brought up the skin tones even more. But in Photoshop, I think you're going to get, you're going to lose too many pixels and it's going to become too washed out. Let's take a look at her skin. Okay, I'm hovering over. If you remember, we are looking at our C, M, Y, and K, the cyan, magenta, yellow over here. Okay, I'm hovering over this to see our skin tones, and we remember our cyan is less than our magenta, which is less than our yellow, and that doesn't seem to be the case here. So it looks like we've got too much magenta. So I'm going to go over the color balance tool. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, and green, and red, and invert. And this, again, is a small file, so you don't necessarily, can't see it as well. Okay, so I'm just masking that just on her skin. A little bit too much yellow. There we go. So you can kind of see we pinked her up a little bit. There's before and after. She was a little bit more gray. Kind of brightened up those skin tones a little bit. Let's do the same thing with baby girl. She looks a little cool on the cool side. So she's got too much magenta. Again, go ahead into color balance. We'll add a little bit of green, a little bit of yellow, and a little bit of red. And really the best way to know what colors to add is to just continually keep working with them. I think your eye begins to develop after so long. I think I did recommend a website. Let me see here. If you just Google in CMYK skin tones, you're going to see the graphic connection kc.com, and the skin tone correction is going to come up. It's a great website for getting familiar with how skin tones are viewed and or corrected in Photoshop. So I won't waste my time or your time telling you about that when you've got a nice website right here. graphicconnectionkc.com. Okay. All right, so we're going to pop back in there. We can see that she was a little bit magenta there. Let's add a little bit more yellow and some red. Okay. Oopsie daisy. That's better. Okay, and you can kind of see we've got some repeating patterns here. A good trick is when you make an image smaller into like a thumbnail size, you are able to see sometimes things that you might not necessarily have noticed. So you can see how the two blades of grass and the two trees. So this is definitely something we're going to want to correct. Oops, easy. Grabbing my J for the patch tool. And I'm just kind of moving this grass around a little bit just so we don't have such a repeating pattern. I wouldn't do that there. I think I would get in there with the clone tool. Okay, but you can see what I am talking about here. So you're on the right track with flipping our image. We could brighten our skin tones again with the curves layer, correct our skin tones a little bit, and I think we're good to go. All right, let's talk about our next image here. Love, love, love this shot. It's absolutely adorable. So you're saying this next guy was shot at 1/500, ISO 800, f5. Flipped him also. Perfect. You're right on target doing that. All right. So you say, so again, what do you think? And then a question about how you reduce noise in a picture. Do you select luminance, the luminance slider in Lightroom? Do you select the noise? Select reduce noise in Photoshop. Also, on your raw images, do you do a final sharpen? Do you do unsharp mask? Raw is somewhat new to you. Okay. All right, so let's take a look. We'll talk about the settings first, and then we will talk about composition, and we'll go into some of the questions that you asked. Okay, so I think I have this in Lightroom. Did I pull this in Lightroom? I did. Okay. So it's easier to work on a raw file in Lightroom. I feel that the adjustments are global in Lightroom, and therefore sometimes they are too dramatic and too harsh on a JPEG. But so this image straight out of the camera, I love that you've got him in this little tub in the middle of a field, super cute. I love that we've got his cowboy boots and his cowboy hat. I love that the angles we're creating were kind of like, we can't see me in Photoshop, she's, whoop, right there. So we've got the golden spiral leading me right to him. All right, so let's take a look here in Photoshop. Okay. I would have loved to, composition-wise, have had him a little bit to the right, and I would have loved to see more what was around him. In a perfect situation, I would have loved to see him in a big, wide, open yellow field with him kind of with his head leaned back, and maybe even his like hat on top of his face, like he was taking a snooze out in the middle of a field. He was maybe out working on the farm and decided that, he found this little wash bin in the middle of a field, and that somebody had left there, and kind of curled up for an afternoon nap. So I really like to get kids daydreaming about that. So I would probably like lean down to him and talk to him about that and say, hey, let's pretend you did this or that, or what do you think that you were doing? And really try to get them engaged in the image. So as far as composition wise, I love how we've got him in the basin, but there's a couple things that I want you to take a look at. So I think this first thing is a little bit distracting to me, is there's like a kind of like a weed or a branch growing out of his head. Again, simple fix, either clone or patch tool. So in Lightroom, this is definitely heavier editing than I would normally do. I would definitely done these same steps in Lightroom, but the results would have been different. Okay, so what do we have here? So I brought the shadows down and I upped the darks. I think we're going to pull the contrast down a little bit. There we go. Okay, so I kept the white balance. Maybe we can make him a little bit warmer. Just slightly warmer. So we upped our white balance, upped our tint. We took our contrast down a little bit just because that was bringing down the shadows and it was getting a little too contrasty. I upped the darks so that it was adding some light kind of into our shadowed areas. I think that's pretty much all I did to it. Oh, we added a little bit of a vignette. But I would love to see, you know, if we could get this, you know, if you have access to this little basin, I would love to see you try this again with one of your little boys. Maybe take them out into a wide open field and have them kind of leaning back and really in the moment. But overall, really great shot. I really love how he's kind of tucked away behind the foreground. I think it's really important to tie your subject into their environment, and I think that you really did that effectively. You know, one good way to always tell is if you can't remove them in Photoshop. So you couldn't cut and paste around him and move him out of here. You can still see all these leaves or the goldenrod around him. So I like that you did that. Okay, and let's take a look at your last image. Let's go back here. All right, this one's from the summer. It's f7.1. The shutter speed is 1/250 and the ISO is 400. Okay, so these little guys are so cute. I just love twins. All right, so at first thought I was going to edit this kind of clean, but I think I wanted to go a little bit of a different direction. So when I look at this image, I'm really kind of loving their expressions, but I'm also looking at the tones of the image. So for me, the green tones are kind of not really jiving with these nice cool tones of their clothing, and their skin tones are even cool, and this wood, and even this red in the back is kind of complementing this blue. So if we had changed our angle slightly and not got as much green in the background and kind of gotten more of this building in the background, I think it would have been even more, you know, more cohesive. Cohesive is a good word. So all of the tones would kind of be more in line. So if we would have taken a step to the left and angled our camera in this way instead of kind of getting this green background. So let me show you this straight out the camera. So I actually pulled, I don't normally do this, but I pulled some of the shadows up quite a bit to kind of create more of a matte feel to it. So we're lightening it up a little bit. We're playing off of that cool light feel that I was saying. So this is where Jen had asked about how do you, when you edit an image, how do you decide how to edit it? Well, to me, like the cool tones of their clothing and their skin tones and the wood from the background wants me to further enhance that. So normally, like I'll get something from an image and I'll just enhance it more. So in this case, what I used to do that was the curves, and I kind of just pulled up the darks and I pulled down the highlights, okay? And that's how we got that look there. So I pulled this into Photoshop. And as far as composition-wise, if we would have kind of taken a step to the left and backed up a little bit, you guys know that I like to see a little bit more room. We could have kind of seen, I'm not sure if they're in a wagon, but that would be really cute if we could see a little bit more of the wagon. I love this guy's expression here. I feel like this guy's a little bit soft. He's out of focus. Your aperture was f7, so I'm not sure if he was moving. Let me see what your shutter speed was. 1/250. He might have been, you still might have got motion blur. I'm not exactly sure. At f7, ISO 250, that's possible. Because the aperture, you should have been able to get everybody in focus for that. If I've got little guys, again, I'm going to reiterate, kind of push them close together. I really like everybody to be touching, so their heads to be touching or some body part to kind of be close. It's also going to be easier for you to grab focus when they're on the same focal plane. Let's see, what else did I want to tell you about this? Oh, you had asked about noise. Okay. So I can't remember what camera you're shooting with, but most of the time I am outside. So I'm shooting in RAW and I have a lot of available light, or I try to have a lot of available light. My camera, I do shoot with the D700 and it allows me to show at very high ISO. So typically I don't deal with a lot of noise. Now when I was first starting out, I had a D300 and it wasn't the best at handling noise. So if I was in a low light situation, I would do my best first first thing would be to do is open up my aperture as wide as I can. So that's going to be the first thing I'm going to do to kind of make sure that I'm getting less noise in camera. So I'm going to open up my aperture as wide as I can. I'm going to take my shutter speed down as low as I can comfortably handhold it, which would be about 1/160 for me. And then that's where I'm going to mess with my ISO. So if you're seeing noise introduced at like ISO 800 in Photoshop, you know, it typically, if I have noise in an image, I don't necessarily do anything to it. There is a noise reductions slider in Photoshop. I'm sorry, in Lightroom. And there have been times where I've played with that just slightly, but I really don't like my people to look too like they look plastic. So I really try to not do that if possible. The only real way I do that is if it's you know, we're at a family event and for whatever reason I had to shoot in really low light. And I'm trying to save an image, and maybe I'll use the noise reduction. But most of the time I really try to play into that grainy feel, especially if I'm shooting in low light. That'll add to the mood of the image. There is a product called Noiseware that's also by the same people that bring you Portraiture. It's Imaginomic, I think that's how you pronounce the company's name, and their product is really good. It is a plugin that you would just run, and it reduces the noise in your image. And I don't use it frequently, but if I ever do have to use a Noiseware product, it is, I feel like it's the best one out there. Okay, and you had asked about what do I do for a final sharpen? Well, that's an easy answer. I don't do anything. So my images aren't selectively, you know, I don't really sharpen anything other than the features. So I think I showed you, you know, I pull them into Photoshop, and I have an action that I run, and I'll walk you through the steps here I do to sharpen their features. So I'm going to Command J to duplicate the layer. I'm going to head up to Filter and then go to Other. I'm going to go to High Pass, add a 10% radius, hit OK. Going to hit the Mask tool, and oops, I'm sorry, I did that prematurely. Go back to our layer here. I'm going to go to this soft light and then to create a mask. Okay, and now we can see they're really nice and crispy. We don't want them to be that crispy. So we're going to invert that layer. B for brush, and let's go ahead and just mask that right on. Their eyes, ears, jawline, and clothing. And this little guy, if he were in focus, I would do this, but I think right now it's going to make his eyes look a little bit cartoonish. But yeah, we really want to make sure we get our subjects in focus if we're going to be using this sharpen, because you can see here it makes it look, like I said, cartoony, like not real. Okay, so that's going to be the only thing I do to sharpen. So it's a high pass sharpen, and I Command F to flatten, and I would save an image like that. Other than that, I don't do an overall sharpening. You'll notice that I do sharpen for web. You're going to notice that a web image looks on a screen substantially sharper than a non-web sharpened image. So I actually would love to tell you that I have a magic trick to for settings for web sharpening, but I actually I got a free action probably the first 2 weeks that I started shooting, and I've kind of had it ever since. It's called Heidi's Resize and Sharpen. It was a free action from a photography forum. I run that 1,000 on the long side at 30% or ish, 20 to 30%. And that's ready for viewing on the web. So you can see there's that. And that. So there's viewing for web, not. Viewing for web, ready for print. So your image ready for print may not appear as sharp as a web image, and especially if you're comparing all of your images to other photographers displayed online and you're not web sharpening them, your images are definitely going to look softer. But trust me, when you print them, as long as they're in focus, no extra sharpening is required in my book anyway. So I hope that answers your question about that. And I think the last question that we wanted to tackle tonight was, you were worried that all your images are starting to look alike, and you think that's okay as far as branding, but scared that they are all looking the same. So yes, it is good that they are all looking the same. I like to put my images together in a collective place so I can kind of gauge where I'm at and what kind of stage I'm in or what I'm feeling, and you can kind of see what my mood is according to what my images are like at that moment. I feel like your images have a sense of calm to them, which is really great. So they kind of have a quiet joy is how I kind of feel it. They're very you get some really great expressions, but a quiet joy is definitely the words that kind of come to mind when I think of your work. I am not seeing, maybe you're feeling like I do see some similar posing, so maybe you want to plan in advance. Sometimes I will write down or email myself some posing that I want to work on with clients, and that will help prompt me so I don't always do the same posing over and over and over again. And that really helps you because I know when you're on a shoot with a client, you're worrying about connection, you're worrying about lighting, you're worrying about your settings, you're worrying about their clothing, the location, they're worrying about all kinds of things, and sometimes posing you just go to your default. So if you have some ideas that you thought about beforehand, then you can kind of just reference those. Even if before smartphones, I even would actually draw like stick figures on paper and throw it in my camera bag, just to make sure that I'm prepared. So I don't feel like I get a boring sense from your images. If you mean same in the sense of boring, I think you're doing well, and I really like to have seen your growth over the last couple weeks. I hope things get better for you too, Becky, with your the little boys took it okay about the horse. So I'm really glad that you did capture that image of them, though, and you share it with us too. All right, Becky, so thank you so much, and I hope you learned something, and I know we are Facebook friends now too, so I will see you over on the other side. Take care.